So listen, it's going to be hot.
Not a bad
They
thing.
sung not about it, and I got
You do the 50 sunscreen. You did the 50 sunscreen.
Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Susan Battle, and I am the Executive Director of Linden Place Mansion, that beautiful home situated right behind us today. We are deeply honored and delighted to be part of this tapestry of history that the Rhode Island Slave History Medallions project is weaving. This tapestry will give us all a new way to see the history that is all around us, and to experience a story that is richer, fuller, deeper, and more inclusive. George DeWolf, nephew of James DeWolf, hired architect Russell Warren to build this house in 1810. Warren had built homes for other DeWolf sea captains and slave traders. All of those homes are now gone, and so what we now call Linden Place has become a symbol of the wealth accumulated by all of the DeWolfs from the business of slavery. While James DeWolf and his slaves Polydor and Adjua never lived at Linden Place, historians are still trying to uncover information about the two people listed as slaves in the 1810 census for the George DeWolf household, and the 4 people listed in the 1820 census under the heading of free black. That research is still ongoing. This mansion does have a unique place in the history of the business of slavery in Rhode Island. George DeWolf continued in the trade even after it was made illegal by federal law. His ships brought thousands of enslaved Africans to the Americas, and the profits from his plantations were produced because of the backbreaking free labor of the enslaved in the fields of Cuba. We know George paid for the house with 1 year's profits from slave trading. His fortune changed in 1825, and bankrupt, he fled Bristol and left a trail of financial destruction in his wake. The house was owned for a while by his cousin William Henry DeWolf, son of James. William Henry died and left the house to his wife Sarah. Sarah eventually had to sell the mansion, and who bought it? Theodora DeWolf Colt, who fled with her family in 1825 when she was just 5 years old, and came back 40 years later to refurbish and then rebrand the house as Linden Place. Eventually, the last surviving Colt grandchild made a brave decision to sell Linden Place not to a developer, but to the Friends, to be operated as a historic house museum. Like many museums and small businesses, we struggled to keep our doors open and serve our community during the recent COVID crisis. The Friends of Linden Place would like to thank our congressional delegation, including Senators Jack Reed and Sheldon Whitehouse, for supporting the PPP funding that supported us. Thank you, Senators. And thanks to the state of Rhode Island, funding was received from the Take It Outside program so that we could purchase outdoor warmers and lights and rent tents, hire musicians, and host many wonderful educational events that lifted the spirits of our community. Your funding gave us heat and hope. Thank you, Governor McKee, Treasurer Magaziner, Secretary Gorbea, and to all our local town officials for their support. Today we invite all of you to take some time to read the stories on the banners that have been placed around the grounds, and to stop at our Ask Me a Question tables. One is staffed by Robert Geek, who has written a number of books, including one about the 1st Rhode Island Regiment and one on the New England and Rhode Island plantations. Robert has also had the experience of a medallion installation at Smith's Castle, where he is chair of the Education Committee. Another table has members of the DeWolf family ready to take your questions. Another is staffed by Dave Weed, who can share his research on the Pokanoket and the Soames Heritage area. We also want to welcome the terrific students of Roger Williams University who have done extensive research on the institution of slavery, the business of slavery in Bristol and Rhode Island. And finally, the members of the board of the Rhode Island Slave History Medallion Project, who are also here with information. So today we invite you all to take some time to walk through the halls of Linden Place, perhaps even become a member and participate in some of our upcoming programs like our community reading of the Frederick Douglass speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, taking place here next Sunday, June 27th at 4 p.m., hosted by acclaimed Trinity Rep actor Joe Wilson Jr. Our history walks and talks, all about Bristol and the DeWolf and the transatlantic slave trade here in Bristol that we do multiple times a month. Or perhaps you might want to listen to a presentation such as the one coming up this month by historian Stephen Chambers about the connection of the sugar plantations to Cuba and Bristol. Go to lindenplace.org and sign up for our newsletter. And do not forget that on this Monday, June 21st, a second medallion will be installed by the Rhode Island Slave History Medallions Project, and they have designed a compelling program at 4 p.m. at DeWolf Tavern, just a couple of blocks from here. So please come and participate. After our formal program today, you are invited to enjoy light refreshments and conversation in the garden. We are really thankful to Bank Newport for their sponsorship of this program and many others taking place at Linden Place this summer. Finally, I want to thank the Board of Directors for the Friends of Linden Place, who are fully committed to creating a space where people feel comfortable when discussing important, timely, and difficult topics. I also want to thank my tireless and dedicated planning committee and staff who helped make this important day possible for Linden Place. The great historian, Dr. John Hope Franklin, who helped get the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. started, once said, "Good history is a good foundation for a better present and future." I want to thank the historians who are here with us today and who have worked with our staff and volunteers, because we all know that good must also be accompanied by accurate and encompassing. These dedicated citizens have helped to build our foundation, and we are excited to learn more, fact check more, consult with historians more, and then share this information with our community. Our ultimate goal is to help people feel more comfortable with topics of complexity, context, and nuance. The placing of the medallion here today inspires us to continue to tell a more holistic and encompassing story. Not just what we want to remember, but what we need to remember. Not just here at Linden Place, but at locations throughout Rhode Island. It's hard work, it takes tireless commitment, and it takes an organization like the Rhode Island Slave History Medallions and a visionary leader to make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the producer of our program today and Executive Director of RISHM, Mr. Charles Roberts.
Thank you very much. That was a hard act to follow with all those thank yous, because I'd have to have you all stand up and thank you because every one of you has contributed to this possibility for Rhode Island slave history. We are here celebrating an act of remembrance. We're here celebrating the essence of the reality of coming together. This is a healing ceremony, and we have brought cultures from all across Rhode Island to share in that culture, and from Africa. We had just a devastating experience just the other day when one of our African dancers' brother died. And I'll tell you that life and death are the same thing. And then we sacrificed, even in wars, our lives to make a difference. And that's why we're here as we are now. And I would just tell you that Rhode Island Slave History Medallions is a place-based education program, and we use QR code technology so that when you are standing in a site-sensitive location, you get the information of that site right there on your phone. It's like the place where you stand is holy ground. And so now I'd rather introduce people that are taller than me. And the first one I will do is Senator Whitehouse. He's like family. I run into him in the grocery store.
Well, Charles, thank you. I may be taller than you physically, but Jack Reed is taller than me parliamentarily in the Senate, and I'm delighted to be here with my distinguished senior colleague, Jack Reed. I want to also recognize we have a great turnout of elected officials, which I think is really important, and maybe if I give a good list, everybody else can be spared having to do that. But Representative Speakman, Representative Carson, Representative Abney, Representative Cortfried, Representative Donovan, Senator Felag, and our treasurer, Seth Magaziner, and of course, our wonderful governor, Dan Mckee, are all here, and I want to maybe spare everybody else having to do the name list by having done it myself, and if I missed anybody, I apologize very, very much. I also want to recognize Joe Wilson, a star of theater in America. So glad that you are here. I want to recognize the members of the Wampanoag community. Here to remind us that this may be Bristol County, but it's Wampanoag country. And then to express my appreciation to Charles Roberts for his inspiration, and to Allison Newsom, the artist of the plaque. We appreciate art in Rhode Island. It's a great part of our community, and I want to make sure I mention Allison. So we're here because something good came out of Texas. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed by President Lincoln in 1862, but it didn't take effect in Texas right away because Texas had not been taken by the Union Army. And so the other southern states, which actually fell as prizes of war, solved the problem with the Emancipation Proclamation. But in 1865, on June 19th, General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston, Texas, and declared all the African American community in Texas to be free. And the celebration began then. It started June 19th the next year, 1866. It has persisted. It has expanded throughout the entire country. And the resolution to make it a national holiday in a wonderful moment of bipartisanship passed the Senate by unanimous consent and was signed into law by President Joe Biden. And while we are here for a moment of reckoning and of recognition and of, I think we all hope, redemption, policy also matters. And I am just here to tell you that Jack's and my experience in Washington is that we have turned a corner in the Biden administration. And the quest for racial and economic and environmental justice is alive in a way that I have never seen it before. In the American Rescue Plan, in the infrastructure bill we're fighting our way towards right now, in our climate and environmental crusade, in all of those major pieces of legislation, they are infused with the quest to achieve those goals. So yes, we have work ahead of us, but we can also take a moment and celebrate what I think has been a tipping point for our country, and we simply need to act on it in Washington. Charles, thank you very much, and now I'm the warm-up act for my distinguished senior senator, Senator Jack Reed, our friend.
Let me thank Sheldon not only for his gracious words, but for his extraordinary leadership in Washington. And I also want to recognize, obviously, Charles Roberts and say, Charles, I look up to you. I really do. I really do. Also, let me thank Susan Battle and all of the great and wonderful volunteers and staff at Linden Place. And thanks to the support they received through the PPP loan program, they were able to continue their efforts, provide virtual interaction with the community and some outdoor activities. But the spirit of Linden Place is incredible, and I applaud it today. I know my colleague has gone through the list, but I would feel remiss if I didn't recognize Governor McKee, Treasurer Magaziner, Representative Donovan, Abney, Speakman, Carson, and Representative Anastasia Williams. Also Council Members Sweeney, Lay, and Texera, all public servants who dedicate themselves to this community. The struggle for freedom is remembered in two ways today: by the installation of the Rhode Island Slave History Medallion and by the celebration of a new scenic byway designation, and also, coincidentally, by the adoption of Juneteenth as a national holiday. Both the Medallion and the Revolutionary Heritage Byway matter because preserving our history matters. That includes stories too often neglected, the stories of enslaved and indigenous individuals. So thank you, Chow, for your dedication to honoring these individuals. Their lives matter, and they deserve this commemoration. One story that exemplifies the Revolutionary Heritage Highway in particular comes to mind. It is the story of two enslaved black men, Juba Smith and Prince Ingram, from Bristol, Rhode Island. On February 14, 1778, the Rhode Island General Assembly voted to offer freedom to those who would voluntarily enlist as soldiers in the Revolutionary War. These men stepped up and enrolled in the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. Although Rhode Island slave owners opposed the law, over 144 free and formerly enslaved African Americans enlisted. Juba Smith was one of the black men of Bristol who enlisted in 1779. Sadly, he took ill in 1779 and died on April 15, 1780. We do not know where he was buried, but we do know this: he lived, his life mattered, and he was willing to lay down his life for the cause of freedom and for this nation. Private Ingraham was another black enlistee from Bristol. In 1780, George Washington personally ordered every regiment of the Grand Army to detach 2 men to fill out a new unit, the Corps of Sappers and Miners. They were dug trenches and were tasked with weakening enemy redoubts or barricades in preparation for an attack. This was the forerunner to the Army Corps of Engineers. Private Ingraham was transferred to this unit on June 12, 1781 because of his skill as a blacksmith. His unit fought at the Battle of Yorktown, which ended the war, and after the British surrendered at Yorktown, Private Ingraham's unit walked the long road back to Rhode Island in victory and in freedom, and in celebration of their sacrifice, both black and white. Today, Juneteenth is a celebration of freedom, but it's also a celebration of people like Prince Ingraham and Juba Smith, whose skill, character, and determination added to the rich mosaic of this great story. Many more stories like this need to be told, and they will be told along the Revolutionary Heritage Byway, and not just on Juneteenth, but every day. Now, I want to thank also the students from Roger Williams University who are going to participate in these activities. Once again, Charles, I look up to you, admire you, respect you, both anatomically and emotionally. Thank you.
When you get somebody like that, I almost fell off the stage with that introduction. I must say, I can't remember everybody's name because so many people talk to me and so many people I have to understand and try to share myself with that I'm so glad I have the top men in the state and in the nation to speak for me and for this act of remembrance. This culture that brings us together is the culture of art. When I was in Africa, I got a chance to be with the Ganawa tribe, and I heard them just click 2 rocks together and make sound that made art, that vibrated in such a way that it raised people's souls and that it got an opportunity to cast out that indifference towards each other and bring us together in a unified way. And here today, we're getting the opportunity to celebrate that. And to do that, I want to tell you that, you know, I remember the stories I used to get in school about the Mayflower. And now to hear the stories, I would think that, gee, you know, somebody like me, a person of color, I must have come in under the Mayflower. So, all kidding aside, 6 years before the Mayflower got here, 27 Wampanoag, Pokanoket were captured and brought and sold in Spain. So it may be a joke, but it ain't so funny. And that's why I'm so proud to bring Dancing Star to the stage.
To botany. I am Po Pumaquaq Anakis, sachem of the Pokanoket tribe of the Pokanoket Nation. Akwini, greetings of peace, and I welcome you to the ancestral homeland of the Pokanoket tribe. Our people have existed on this land for well over 10,000 years. And the Creator himself put our people here to care for this land and everything on it. And so I would like to take this time to honor our ancestors for caring for the land and everything on it, for living in harmony and in balance, and for protecting the land, and especially those who protected the land unto death. I would also like to acknowledge the Pokanoket people today who continue to live in harmony and still are working to restore balance to our lands here. To botany, thank you. And now, I would like to introduce my elder and my sagamore. And I'm very honored to introduce him by a title that he just received by Roger Williams University. He received an honorary doctorate for the work that he has done for the Pokanoket people and for indigenous people all over. So I would like to introduce Dr. William Winds of Thunder Guy, Sagamore Powampi Neampog of the Pokanoket tribe, Pokanoket Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Whew. Yeah, my 79th year on this earth, it's hard to believe that I received an honorary doctorate at this time. So I'm still humbled by that. My name is Powampi Neampog, and I am the 10th generation great-grandson of the Massasoit Osamequin, who welcomed the Pilgrims to this country, and also signed the first peace treaty ever with the Europeans. I am the 9th generation great-grandson of Po Metacomet. You know him historically as King Philip. And my 6th generation great-grandson was the hand-picked bodyguard of General George Washington. His name was Simeon Simons. That is King Philip's great-grandson. I wear this star and 7 crescents because this is what Simeon Simons showed George Washington when he asked who he was. Simeon received a pension from the United States government as a Continental soldier, which was a higher pension than the regular army. I am also the 6th generation grandson of an indentured servant, slave of Toby Wheaton, who was given to his son Daniel Wheaton in Jamestown, which was canonicus to us, Ireland. There's a mural in downtown Providence of an Indian princess. Her name is Princess Redwing. She was chief before me. In 1978, J. Joseph Garrity named June 23rd, I believe it was, as Princess Redwing Day in the state of Rhode Island. She is the 5th generation granddaughter of Toby Wheaton. It's my mother's first cousin. When the English first came to this country, the Mayflower actually landed here in Provincetown, and they pulled up anchor because the Norsets were firing on them because of some things that happened years before with our people who were taking slaves to Europe. And they eventually landed in Plymouth. And Plymouth was the second colonized community in the New World. The first was Jamestown, Virginia. But this whole area, southeastern Mass, parts of present-day Rhode Island, Martha's Vineyard Island, Elizabeth Island, Prudence Island, Patience Island, was all known as Poconoke Country or King Philip Country later. But any map prior to the King Philip War, 1675, 1676, says right on it, and this is including the map maker to the King of England, who was the John Sellers map, says right on it, Poconoke Country, King Philip Country. The name Wampanoag didn't come into being until the King Philip War, 1675. 1676, when the colonial government outlawed the word Poconoke, and if you were male 14 years of age or older and said you were Poconoke, they would kill you on sight. That was never taken off the books. That information can still be found today. I would like to thank the Rhode Island Slave History Medallion Project team for acknowledging the true history of Rhode Island connection to the transatlantic slave industry in the 18th, 19th century. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the precursor to that slave industry was actually the indigenous people. You have to forgive me. This is a history that has been hidden for far too long. My people were enslaved, sold into slavery. They were erased from the public record by simply changing indigenous records to colored or mulatto. They had their lands taken from them by environmental genocide, the displacement of one race of people and placement of another race of people. And we were sold into slavery from the Carolinas to Florida, which I believe at that time was considered part of the Caribbean. And then from the Caribbean, which we know today, all the way to the Madeira Island in the Azores. In the year 2019, the Poconoke tribe was invited down to Jamestown, Virginia, for a day of remembrance and healing for the descendants of the first African slaves who came to Virginia in 1619. That was their 400-year mark of slaves being brought to this country. And we were invited there because we were considered a sister tribe of the Rappahannock Nation. And the Rappahannock Nation was the nation that was involved with the Jamestown colonists. Queen Anne, who was the chief of that tribe and the direct descendant of Pocahontas, was also there at this healing remembrance. This movement was started by Wade Trump, who was a pastor down in Jamestown Christian Fellowship. And he was doing this. I met him back in 2008. Prior to that, he had been to Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall with a bunch of indigenous people from the Rappahannock tribe and other tribes in this nation. And they were chanting at this wall, and the Jewish rabbi came out to them, and he asked them if they knew what they were chanting about. And they told him, no, this is something that we've always done in our tribe. And he told them that they were calling down the Most High God in his language. And he also told them that they needed to go back to America and apologize to the American Indians for what the colonists did to them. So since that time, Arise America has been to over 300 tribes in the United States. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but they are on the website. And they have gone there and prayed for the healing of the land. And he said the reason being is before God could do anything, they had to pray for the healing of the land. In 2015, a delegation from Jamestown, Virginia came here to Bristol, Rhode Island to our Strawberry Moon Thanksgiving, and they prayed for the healing of the land here at Mount Hope. So here we are today, 400 years later. And it's time that the wrongs of the past be acknowledged. So I am grateful that we are here today and that we can begin the healing process. There are people from many different ethnic backgrounds here today, but there is only one human race. We need to live in peace, harmony, and balance with each other. I guess another word for that would be love. Our Creator will not hold you accountable for how others treat you, but you will be held accountable for how you treat others. Thank you. I think at this time that we are going to introduce the Powers team from the Poconoke tribe.
Let's introduce the governor first. Oh, I'm sorry. By the way, just to let you know, this is an act of remembrance. See, because I feel like I brought my people together, the people of color, including black, white, you name it, for one reason, to make that harmonious agenda. I was, unfortunately, my grandfather looked like the chief, and no one in 1950 would ever admit it. And it's taken me a long time to get over that tragedy in my heart. So to hear him talk about the truth of what God has brought to us, who we are and why we are, is magnificent and important to me. And Chief, I thank you for that. This is an act of remembrance. And now I'd like to, before we start with our healing ceremony with the drums and dancers, I'd like to introduce our governor, Dan Mckee. Hey, great guy.
Well, thank you, and now we don't have the podium, I think that the talks will get a little shorter. But I want to, again, recognize from the microphone Senator Whitehouse and Senator Rhode and the whole congressional delegation. It's been mentioned once, but it needs to be mentioned over and over again. Thank you for your leadership, Senator, on many issues, but in particular, allowing us to recover so quickly in the state of Rhode Island. So thank you so much. I know that Rep. Williams has been recognized, but thank you for her champion on these causes, and of course Charles with the Rhode Island Slave History Medallions. Thank you so much, Charles. And before I leave the stage, I got a little proclamation for you and from both the Lieutenant Governor and myself. But we do know this Juneteenth issue is a good one, and we know that it's been long overdue. So again, thanks to the leadership in DC. I'll be more than happy to sign the bill when it comes my way. If it does work its way through the General Assembly, we'll have a nice ceremony and give it its just due. So I'll be happy to sign that bill when it comes my way. I would also say that when I got sworn in, our poet laureate really put into words that are things that I've been trying to think about for years when she described this democracy as this perfect imperfection. And I think that's what it is. It's a journey towards the perfection, but we know that over the course of our history that we haven't been perfect. And the acknowledgement today, both here at the Linden Place, but also around the state of Rhode Island. I'll be headed to Woonsocket, Rhode Island very shortly, to a Boys and Girls Club that is doing the same thing we're doing here. And that remembrance that the Chief spoke about. Thank you, Chief, for your comments today. And I'm honored to be participating in this moment in time for the state of Rhode Island. And I think that providing whatever leadership we can from our State House on this issue to make sure this equity piece, we put a whole division of our office based on equity and opportunity. And we're going to really work that really hard. And we're going to partner in with people like Charles. We're going to partner in like people like the Roger Williams, doing their research. That is so critical for us at this moment in time, to have the facts and have the research and have that information and not walk away from it just because it was a troubling time in our country. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here today, Charles, and keep up the good work, and we'll certainly be supporting your efforts and the rest of the efforts of the people in the state of Rhode Island that have seen clearly, right, that this is the moment. When we changed the name of the state, that was a moment. The sale was made, and now we need to do something with it. So thank you for having me here today.
Oh, I'm so lucky that I've been able to assemble these people that represent us and represent this cause, this movement that is spreading across the country, where people are looking at themselves, looking at their environments, and looking at their lives and saying, you know what, something ain't right. And they're doing something about it. Because before you can make a change, you have to commit to it. And that's why right now I'm going to introduce you guys come on up here, because I can't say all their names. Hold it. But all I know is, as far as I'm concerned, they're all my brothers.
Kwekwe the Bats, which is welcome, welcome, friends in our language. We are the Eastern Medicine Singers. We are an Algonquin drum group. We want to welcome you here today, and we're going to do a series of different songs for you, and we hope that you will like them and take some of our spirit with you. Hello.
Thank you, brother. So I'm gonna step aside and let them bless this land and bring the spirit forth.
Tabane wuche, akeke sekak. Tabane wuche, nipi kwaza kwaznash. Tabane wuche, merkwash ke sekak. Katane tabane, hey, aho. Thank you for the earth and sky. Thank you for the water and the rocks. Thank you for the trees and just for today. Great Spirit, I thank you. Great Spirit, I thank you. Hey, bless all of you. Okay, we're going to do a song for you called the Niski Tumpawad. In our language, that means we welcome all of the people from all four directions of man, from the white, the black, the red, and the yellow. This song is a welcome song that we use in the powwows, and we want to bring it to all of you today and welcome you here to Indian Country, Turtle Island. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce myself. I'm an elder, obviously. My name is Harry Hawk Edmonds. And I want to welcome everybody here today on this historical day. Many times I'm approached and I get asked, do you speak your language? And for those of you who don't know, after the King Philip's War of 1675-1676, my ancestors were deprived from speaking their language. They had to assimilate and adapt the ways of the settlers in order to survive. So they were forbidden from speaking their language. So what I'd like to do today to commemorate this historical day is offer a sacred tobacco prayer in the language of my people, the Algonquin, the Nipmuc language that we spoke back in the day. Although the different tribes spoke different dialects, our people were able to communicate and understand one another. So this sacred tobacco prayer that I'm going to offer here today is all about honor and respect, which is the native way. And unfortunately, in today's world, the honor and respect seems to be forgotten, and we have to get it back. I will also offer this sacred tobacco prayer in the English language, so you've understood what I've said. If I could get everybody to stand, those that can, those that can't, and remove your hats if you will. It's a very pretty language, and it's a shame that it was taken from us. This prayer is called Nepitan. I pray. I will begin. Katatawit numagni owitamog. Aki numagni owitamog. Okamus nupashad numagni owitamog. Wuchichi kiriasan nupawas numagni owitamog. Tubatni anoin. Numagni witamog o uk na shikaki. Wapanayu, Sowanayu, Patanayu, Nanamayu. Tubatni Anawain, Nuwachi, Wami, Nitam Pog, Neg Pamaninacheg, Neg Pamampachig, Papinashimwag, Metakoshka Maskitosh, Nemosag, Aquitianamuk, we, Chininamacheg, Atuk, Musk, Makoshim, Tunapasag, Sasaso, Wudagash, Katatuit, Numagni, Owitamog. Oh, Great Spirit, I offer this tobacco. Mother Earth, I offer this tobacco. Grandmother Moon, I offer this tobacco. Grandfather Sun, I offer this tobacco. I thank you. I offer this tobacco to the four directions, to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. I thank you for all my relations, the winged nation, the creeping, crawling nation, the four-legged nation, the green and growing nation, and all things living in the water. Honoring the clans, the deer, the bear, the wolf, the turtle, the snipe, and the rabbit. Great Spirit, I offer this tobacco. Aho. I thank you. You may be seated. Katabatas.
Kaniska! Hello, everyone. Agwani, greetings, everyone here. At this time, I want to say thank you, Father, Great Spirit of God, for our Chief Paul was not here at this time. He's going through a hard time. And may peace come to him and his family. Oh. The name Sheldon Whitehouse has a big meaning in my household. I remember Mr. Whitehouse when he was a young guy and he was assistant DA. I'm retired from Providence. My family were all veterans. I was in the Air Force. My two sons were in the Marine Corps. One of my boys went to Iraq. I received a phone call at 10 o'clock at night. I'm wondering who's calling me 10 o'clock at night. All I hear is, hello. Hello, who's this? Is this a Tilson household? I said, yes, who's speaking? This is Sheldon Whitehurst. Mr. Whitehurst was in Iraq. And from that moment on in time, I want to say also to you, Tosh, stay firm. God bless you. Thanks for thinking of my family and all the veterans and all the active servicemen in this country. At this time, I'm an acting power spiritual leader in training, and my position is to keep our family, our nation, whole and in peace, believing in the Holy Spirit, honorable also to everyone here. There's only one God, one spiritual leader, and He's with us always, because we're all created by one God. We are all one people. And on this setting of command, all people love one another. And in my position, that is what I do with my tribe and also to you also. And all you who are also called by the Holy Spirit, raise your hand. You know you have a position in the world. Share that position. Work it whenever you can. We have the power through the great Spirit of Holy God. Amen.
I'm Natua Kwananan. I'm also training powers. I'm going to pray because we need to pray for the land. The land needs to be blessed, but before it can be blessed, we need to ask for forgiveness. So what I'm asking each and every single person here now, just search in your heart and ask God to forgive you and your ancestors for what they may have done to cause all these problems that we've been going through. Amen. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we praise you. We give glory and honor to you right now. We ask, dear Lord, that you bless this land. Heal this land. Heal these people right now. We speak the shalom, your peace, Father, which surpasses all understanding, would guard their hearts and guard their hearts. Guard their hearts and guard their minds. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
There's one thing I'd like to leave you folks with. My mother's side, we come off the war chief to the Massasoit. His name was Anawan. You probably heard of Anawan's Rock out there on Route 44 in Rehoboth. That's where the King Philip's War pretty much ended, when Benjamin Church came upon the remaining members of the tribe, and Anawan turned over all the valuables to him, which pretty much ended the war. But when the tribe was fighting against the settlers to save the land, Anawan was heard to cry out in battle, Ayutash! Ayutash! Stand firm and fight! Ayutash! Can I get an Ayutash from you people out there? Ayutash! Stand firm and fight. Don't ever give up. The world is going through some terrible times right now. So we got to stand firm and we've got to fight. Ayutash. Oh.
Seven generations in the future and 7 generations in the past. And when you allow this kind of remembrance, this kind of healing into your heart. That's who is affected. Those from 7 generations in the future and 7 generations in the past. So I'd like to thank you for that.
I want everybody in your heart to reach out and pray to the being up higher than where we are. Ichimonatu. Yahweh, Yahweh, ho, Yahweh, 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 Yahweh. Mataki after that.
And now I'd like to present to you the Slave History Medallion. And excuse me if I get a little bit emotional, because what's happening, the chief looks like my grandfather. So it means a lot to me to have the nation here. That being said, I'm going to now show you the Rhode Island Slave History Medallion. How it was created was, I was in God's little acre, running around like a bad little kid when I was young. And when I came back from Africa and Europe, I walked through it and I thought I was in a field of angels. And that's what I asked, what is this? And I was told there are soul effigies. And that at the time of the colonies, people believed, as they do in Africa and the rest of people of color, that when you die, your soul is taken to heaven on the wings of angels. So therefore, I created the symbol for us, our state, our history, to be programmed through a symbol that we could recognize wherever we are in this state. And I put a QR code on it so that you could then therefore scan it so that you'd understand the place where you stand at that very moment, in the here and now, is where God is. I mean, imagine this. Imagine this man. He was an African slave brought here as a child, and he could read and write. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to make these. And then he had that memory of a soul effigy. He worked in the William Stevens shop, which is still standing in Newport. And I imagine him working there and saying, okay, Billy, I'll tell you what, I'll carve all these 200 slave images on gravestones that I've done already, and I'll carve the rest for the rest of my life until I die, since I've been enslaved. But this one I'm signing, because this is for the gravestone of my brother, Cuffy Gibbs. And as you know that you weren't allowed to have family or understand that you're a part of a greater good, of a greater unit by having family. And I'm here to tell you that You are my family, the family of man, the people of like kind who celebrate Juneteenth, a remembrance of what has gone in the past and to change in the future. So I want to say, in fact, Calista, could you bring the actual medallion up? This is my granddaughter, Calista. She's doing her best Vanna White impersonation, so you have to excuse her. I'm so proud of her. She's a singer extraordinaire. She's been singing since she's been 12 years old. And I'm fortunate to have those kind of genes in my family so that all of us are talented and understand art as a transformational tool. And this is the art of remembrance. Thank you. And now I'd like to bring to the stage a fabulous scholar, professor at Roger Williams University, Miss Charlotte Carrington Farmer.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Enslaved peoples lived and labored in Rhode Island from the birth of the colony until slavery was abolished in 1842. And even after 1842, not everyone got their freedom immediately. The town of Bristol's role was twofold. Firstly, it led the way in the trade in enslaved peoples, and secondly, enslaved peoples lived and labored in the business of slavery in Bristol itself. Town founder Nathaniel Heyman owned at least one enslaved woman at the time of his death. Estimating the numbers of enslaved peoples in Bristol and those trafficked by Bristolians is difficult, and the numbers are always in flux. However, we can estimate that on the eve of the American Revolution, Bristol was home to at least 132 enslaved peoples, which represented 11% of the town's population. A few years earlier, in 1750, Rhode Island had held the highest proportion of enslaved peoples in New England. 10% of the population of the colony of Rhode Island was enslaved, double the northern average. Bristol's economy was tied to the West Indies and to South America, in particular Cuba. Merchants transported local agricultural products to sugar plantations in exchange for molasses, and the same merchants brought the molasses back to Rhode Island and sold it to distilleries who used it to make rum. Christy Clark Pajara estimates that Rhode Islanders trafficked more than 60% of North American trade in enslaved Africans. And as Cynthia Johnson's work suggests, during the 18th century and into the 19th, Rhode Islanders purchased and sold more enslaved peoples than all other traders in enslaved peoples in the newly formed United States. So I think this is why it matters to Rhode Islanders in particular to pay heed to Juneteenth today. So whilst actual documentation is scant, it's likely that enslaved peoples helped to build the town of Bristol and also Linden Place in particular. Once constructed, they certainly had a hand in its operations. The 1810 census documented 2 enslaved peoples in residence at Linden Place as part of George DeWolf's household. Their names remain unknown at this point, but I really hope budding scholars like my students are able to uncover more about their life in future years. Other enslaved peoples in Bristol formed families which were not necessarily legally recognized, but in practice there were clear multi-generational families. One example is the Burt family. Scipio Burt, who was enslaved by Reverend John Burt of Bristol's First Congregational Church, was well known within Bristol's black community, and he was able to eventually marry a woman named Suki, who was enslaved by Mark Antony DeWolf. Suki was likely brought to Bristol around 1765, and she and Scipio had a number of children, although only a handful survived into adulthood. The status of other members of Bristol's black community is less clear. For example, we're unsure if Cato Howland, who is described, and I quote, as a Negro man so called, was ever enslaved, as the details of his early life are scant. Cato, like Scipio Burt, was a leader in the Newgorry African community in town. Groundbreaking research by Courtney Garrity, a history major at Roger Williams University and a current intern at the Bristol Historic and Preservation Society, revealed just literally last week that Cato owned property in Bristol which he purchased from Charles de Wolfe in 1797. Cato, who went on to work as a mariner, was married to Suki, and note that's a different Suki to the one I just mentioned. And Suki was described, and I quote, as mulatto in 1796. Sadly, Suki died in childbirth just 2 years later, with the child passing just 6 days after. Cato eventually married Barbara Monroe after Suki's passing, and when he died in 1802, the town was appointed as executor of his estate. He was survived by his second wife, Barbara, and his son, John, and Barbara went on to appear in the town's poor records several times in the ensuing years. In this respect, the Howland family complicates our understanding of the African American community in Bristol. One of the myths that I want to lay to rest today is that enslavers in the North were benevolent, and therefore enslaved peoples accepted it. Let me be clear with you this afternoon. It was not, and they were not. Enslavement was contested at every step, and enslaved peoples in Bristol, just like their counterparts around the Atlantic world, ran away, lobbied for their freedom, and worked to live full lives within the constraints of enslavement. Some resisted by joining the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, which was the only fully integrated regiment to fight in the Revolutionary War, which played an integral role in pretty much every major battle, including the defense of Rhode Island. Muster rolls reveal a number of soldiers with Bristol connections, including Bristol Rhodes, Juba Smith, Cuffy Slade, and Solomon Roffey. Others ran away, and one such freedom seeker here in Bristol was an enslaved man named Bristol Finney, who ran away from his enslaver, Josiah Finney, in May of 1782. Josiah, son of Jeremiah, owned a distillery literally just down the street on the corner of State and Thames Streets. You would say Thames, I would say Thames. The enslaved man named Bristol, presumably named after the town of Bristol, could only find freedom from running away from this place, even after the Revolution. Bristol's enslaver, Josiah, posted an advert in the local newspaper stating, and I quote, "Ran away from the subscriber, a Negro fellow named Bristol, about 19 years of age, about 5 feet 9 inches high, walks upright, had on, when he went away, a blue coat, a pair of striped flannel trousers, patched with cloth in a different color, and an old check shirt. Carried with him 2 white shirts, a white jacket, white breeches, and an old white worsted stockings." Josiah had one enslaved person listed on the 1774 census, which was most likely Bristol. Josiah, Bristol's enslaver, went to great lengths to try to recover his human property, noting, and I quote again, "Whoever will take him up, this said fellow, and secure him so that his master may have him again, shall have $8 reward and all necessary charges." Knowing that the town of Bristol was a bustling port, Josiah warned, and I quote again, all masters of vessels to be forbidden to carry him off at their peril. So the story of Bristol, the enslaved man, is worth considering. I'm clearly not a native of Bristol. I'm British. But one thing that's become obvious to me in the 9 years that I've worked here is that Bristol likes to celebrate its freedom. Really, being a Brit here on the 4th of July, I tell you, is quite something. But all jokes aside, when I think of the town of Bristol and its connection to freedom, I think of the enslaved man named after the town who could not find freedom here even after the Revolution in the town that he was named after. So it's clear to me that the town of Bristol has clearly come a long way since the enslaved man Bristol ran away in 1782. And I think truthfully it's come a long way in the 9 years that I've been here. Rather than brushing this difficult history under the table, as had been the way for so many years, in the past few years, the Bristol Historic and Preservation Society, under the leadership of its executive director, Dr. Catherine Zipp, has stepped up with public sessions tackling the town's history of enslavement and racial oppression. And of course today, permanent markers through the Rhode Island Slave History Medallions project will help the town further to remember and to take steps to reconcile with its difficult history. It's particularly encouraging to be welcomed today by the first peoples of this land, as Bristol's connection to enslavement includes Indigenous enslavement in the 17th century, along with the documentary genocide of Indigenous voices in the surviving archival sources from both the 18th and 19th century. Moreover, the involvement of Roger Williams University also matters. The university itself grapples with the legacy that its namesake, Roger Williams, was an enslaver and trader in Indigenous slaves. Moreover, here in Bristol, it was where Metacon was murdered, just behind us at Patumtuck, now known as Mount Hope. And from there, his family sold into enslavement into the Caribbean and beyond. It's now my great pleasure to hand over to some of my wonderful students who've completed research for the Rhode Island Slave History Medallions project last semester. Let me be clear, this was no easy task. Students mastered paleography skills, the ability to read manuscript sources in the archives. There's no standardization of spelling, use and visa interchangeables, as are S's and F's. And they kind of plied through the archives to read land evidence, deeds, merchant account books, letters, shipping papers, archaeology reports, muster rolls, census data, newspapers, church records, and many more types of sources that I could list. So it's my pleasure to hand over to my students who will tell you a little bit about the research that they and their peers have completed. And I'll hand over to our first speaker, Kristen, who is here. After Kristen, we'll hear from Maddie McEwen, who is right here. And then we will pass on to Ainsley Ivana. I got that right, I was panicking. And then finally, we'll hear from Michelle Correa. So I hand over with great pleasure to you, Kristen.
Central to understanding Bristol's role in the trafficking of humans is understanding the role that the DeWolf family played. Over the course of 50 years and 3 generations, as Cynthia Johnson has noted, the DeWolfs were the nation's leading traders in enslaved peoples. For George DeWolf, for whom Linden Place was built, the trade in enslaved peoples was a family business. He and his uncles financed, in whole or part, 88 slaving voyages, which accounted for nearly 60% of all African voyages that originated in Bristol. George's uncle, James DeWolf, from whom he learned the trade, operated as many as 30 slave ships at one time and brought more than 30,000 captured Africans to Cuba and the Americas. Members of the DeWolf family eventually owned or invested in banks, insurance companies, rum distilleries, and textile mills. Members of the DeWolf family captained many of these voyages and were thus personally responsible for transporting enslaved peoples to American shores.
Continuing that, amid the growing success of his business ventures, James DeWolf encountered a series of impediments. He was charged with murdering an enslaved woman in 1790 on a ship named the Polly from Africa to Cuba. Early on in the voyage, an enslaved woman became ill with smallpox. DeWolf moved her to the top of the deck and tied her to a chair to ensure isolation. Reportedly noticing that she had become progressively worse, DeWolf made the decision to murder her. After a heated discussion with the crew, DeWolf threw the woman overboard and gagged and tied her to the chair, commenting that he was sorry he lost such a good chair. Once the voyage ended, De Wolfe noted in his log that 109 peoples were sold for profit. One boy was given away. He kept 10 enslaved peoples for himself. One male captive was infirm and one female died during the voyage. De Wolfe's action broke a number of federal and state laws regarding the trade and treatment of enslaved people. De Wolfe heard the indictment and immediately left for the Gold Coast of Africa, and eventually testified in St. Thomas, where the judge ruled in his favor. De Wolfe went on to finance another 25 slaving voyages, usually with other members of his family. Both James and George continued the trade and enslaved people, despite the state and federal laws, and no doubt aided by the fact that the customs inspector for Bristol, Charles Collins, was James De Wolfe's brother-in-law, who turned a blind eye. During the early 19th century, Bristol's economy relied heavily on income generated by the Cuban sugar plantations its prominent families owned. Most of Bristol's rich architecture dates from this period and reflects the wealth Bristol's elite families derived from the trade and enslaved peoples. Linden Place is one such house, which was built in 1810 by architect Russell Warren for George De Wolfe. The cost to build the home, well over $1 million in today's dollars, was equal to 1 year's profit in human trafficking. The history of Bristol's involvement in the trade and enslaved peoples has centered primarily on the De Wolfe family, the town's undisputed leaders. But the De Wolfes did not act alone. They needed captains, seamen, agents, merchants, carpenters, shoemakers, and tradesmen of all sorts for their business to thrive. Traders and enslaved peoples paid shipbuilders, insurers, blacksmiths, and a wide variety of other tradesmen, merchants, and farmers. Financial institutions were heavily invested in slavery. Almost every business and industry in the town traded or did business with merchants or shippers whose wealth was generated by slavery. Those who invested in slaving voyages came from almost all walks of life. Although wealthy families such as the De Wolfes were often significant investors, ordinary tradesmen and artisans such as blacksmiths, masons, bakers, rope makers, painters, etc., also owned smaller shares in slaving voyages.
Other families such as the Wilsons, Fales, Ushers, Wardwells, and Monroes also profited directly from buying and selling human beings. For example, Samuel Wardwell, captain and co-owner of the vessel Fair Eliza, transported 135 enslaved people from the Windward Coast in Africa in 1806, and another 85 captives the following year from the Pongo River area in Guinea. As previously noted, the numbers are always in flux, but we have identified 3,452 enslaved peoples who were transported by Bristol families other than the De Wolfes from the end of the Revolutionary War to 1807. Even with incomplete records, we have identified 63 different captains and co-owners with a connection to Bristol. As Catherine Zipp's research shows, this reliance was so strong that the 1825 failure of George De Wolfe's sugar crop in Cuba plunged the town's economy into a major multi-year depression. George and his family abandoned Bristol and went to Noah's Ark, his plantation in Cuba. Indeed, the town went bankrupt alongside George De Wolfe. Linden Place was stripped of household furniture and fixtures as items were auctioned off to cover his debts. It's no exaggeration to say that the whole of Bristol turned on the trade. That's why it's so important that we acknowledge this history of enslavement and human trafficking today. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte, and your students from Roger Williams University. I mean, these stories are stories that are beyond me. They're beyond name and form. And we're brought here so that you could understand the significance of a healing ceremony of remembrance. And now, I'll tell you, when I lived in Africa, I got a chance to experience the motherland. And the motherland was where music and art and education and family were one. And they celebrated it through what's called tumbao, And so now I'm going to bring my brothers from Mali to the stage, and they're going to do a couple of songs so that you can see and feel the spirit of the motherland.
Kamara, Kali, I'm Sidi Maiga, Caroline, thank you for having us.
Now you hear where soul comes from. And I was fortunate enough to live in Africa and experience this. And now I'm here to share it with you. So to finally seal this act of remembrance, so this healing ceremony can take place, I'm going to bring about a salute from the 1st Regiment. And I'm proud to say that I'm one of them. And I have to say this. If I lived then, and I had to carry that 30-pound weapon, I had to wear all those clothes, and I had to stand there, stand up and fire against the British and the Hessians, the most trained army on earth at that time. I told my commander, I'll tell you what, here's your weapon. I'm going to go back and get some hay. Because so that's why I'm so proud of the work that was done at Patriots Park, and so proud of my ancestries and bringing them to you. And now we'll seal this healing ceremony with a salute from the 1st Black Regiment. That against a crack group of soldiers and keeping them from, the 1st Regiment fought the first battle of Dunkirk and kept our army from being able to escape and fight again another day. Thank you, my friends from the 1st Black Regiment. And this is the conclusion of our story, the story of living history, the story of having an opportunity to be a witness to the presence of renewing our historical heritage through an act, an art from artists, an art of remembrance, the celebration of healing. I thank you. I also want to thank Carrie, all of my state representatives who, by now I'm so worn out I can't remember their names. And Lauren Carson's over there, and Gary's over there, and stand up, all you people. All the governors and state representatives have left, but still I want to be able to acknowledge them. They acknowledged me and they acknowledged themselves better than I ever could. But one group I want to thank is Miss Williams is here from Providence, and I want to thank the board of Linden Place. And of all people in the board of Linden Place, I want to thank Lynn Smith. Lynn Smith said to me once, she said, and it might be a problem, she said, you're like an eagle. You're flying over the investment in our future. And so you see all of it at once. And I said to her, yes, but it's really difficult to land. So I thank you all and my board, oh my God, the Risham board. Without them, I'd be lost, especially my wife, Margaret Baker. So thank you, everyone here that has remained. And remember, there is only one God, one Spirit, one soul, and it's us, the people of like kind, who are progressive enough to attend a remembrance ceremony. Thank you, and God bless.